Benny Seymour, welcome to the Without Limits podcast.
Mate, thanks very much for having me.
How are you, mate?
Man, I'm good. It's been a long time coming, I feel like, to hang out. It's awesome to have you here.
It certainly has been a long time coming, and this is probably the last bit of the trip for us, sitting down with you, having this podcast. So a great way for me to round it out. You're someone that I've followed for, I keep saying 6-8 years. I don't know. Since I feel as though since I've kind of transitioned out of rugby into functional fitness.
Yeah.
When there's a few kind of key people around the world that I would connect with or take inspiration from, or we would test each other on certain workouts, albeit like digitally through social media. You are certainly one of the first. So I'd like to say it's back from 2016, but I'll have to search through my messages. It's great to sit opposite you. We've obviously shared in a couple of training sessions since we've been here. Maybe not enough, but we'll revisit that hopefully next year. I want to start by asking what Without Limits means to you, mate.
Yeah. For me, it's just being all in, not worrying about the outside noise, and just following through with what you say you're going to do, and really fight the limits, see what you're capable of.
You've got a relatively small following in the grand scheme of social media these days. I think you deserve way more for kind of who you are and what you've done and what you continue to do, and also just like the good I can't say that word, the good guy that you are, right? And actually we obviously did that workout this morning. I shared a post, we collaborated on it, and one of the comments was the GOAT of functional fitness. How does that make you feel when someone says you're the GOAT of functional fitness?
I'd like to say that maybe it was talking about you, but I mean, yeah, I did see that comment and I got goosebumps thinking about it. I mean, to train with you and to, like you said, been 5-6 years I've been looking at it. I feel like I train and do life with a bit of integrity. So to be able to have that kind of recognition, it's definitely humbling. I
think because for the listeners that don't necessarily follow you or maybe have not heard of you, they would have done if they followed me during this trip, because as I say, I've spent a lot of time with you. You're someone who've got a huge, as an athlete, as a spokesperson for the industry, as a coach, as a hybrid athlete, more recently with kind of this rise of testing ourselves through marathons, ultra endurance events, but still staying strong and, doing things with integrity. There's not many people that I would look upon that have got your resume, but also go about it the way you go about it. So I think, the term GOAT gets thrown around quite a bit, but when I think about functional fitness and I feel about people that around the world that have been doing this for a long, long time, before High Rocks, before any of this stuff became popular, you're right up there with those people. And I hope that off the back of this week and maybe off the back of this podcast, people will start to follow that journey a little bit more, because you certainly deserve more followers. I know you're not in this for the followers, by the way. You're one of the most humble dudes I know. But I think a lot of people could take a lot out of it from following you to understand how to curate the right training program, how to approach things from a mindset perspective, and even just like not worrying too much, like you said, about the outside noise and about what the time needs to necessarily be, and just about getting, ripping in. And I think that's super relatable for people.
Yeah, thank you. I guess I need to put more time into sharing that kind of stuff and knowing that, people might benefit from it and actually putting that time and effort into it and sharing the problem solving that I work out on a lot of these long events.
Let's take it back to rugby, right? Because again, I think for the listeners, those people that resonate with my story, they know that it's been from a transition of rugby into kind of fitness, and then fitness as it has evolved, like me trying to iterate on myself as an athlete and keep trying to push myself and find those limits. And you are a bigger physically version of me, right? Rugby was the thing. We kind of retired around the same kind of age, went into functional fitness and more recently into these kind of endurance endeavors. Your resume is certainly more accomplished than mine, and we'll come on to some of the things that you've achieved. But what was it like transitioning out of rugby? Just because a lot of people that I speak to and follow me, their goal is to become a professional athlete, whether it's rugby or any sport, and injuries and luck of the draw and things just don't go their way, and they feel as though they then lose everything. I certainly felt that my identity had kind of been swept from underneath me. What's your kind of memories of rugby, but also that transition of coming away from it?
Yeah, it can definitely happen. I probably did feel a little bit of that. I guess early on in my rugby career, I was never the first picked in a team. I was always the smallest guy. I wasn't the fastest, wasn't the best skilled player in the team. And I think that taught me a lot about my work ethic. So I always really strived hard. My thing was being the fittest player in the team and being able to make critical decisions under pressure. So being a fly half, that was sort of the role. So I really prided myself on that aspect of my game. Leaving it, I left under circumstances that weren't planned. So my career sort of got taken away from me at a point, and it was tough. But fitness was sort of my outlet to that. I actually just started training myself, training some friends, and then people wanted me to train them. And I thought, well, I'm not a personal trainer. I'm not qualified to do this kind of stuff, but I've been around the professional setup probably for 10 years now with some really great high performance coaches. And I always used to be best mates to them and pick their brain and be that annoying bloke asking all the questions. So I really nerded out on that kind of aspect of it. But then started training people and fell into this health and fitness space.
Was the questions and poking at maybe the coaches to make up for your lack of, as you said, kind of, I guess, natural skill? I mean, obviously to play professional rugby for the clubs that you've played for, because you're talking yourself down again here. To play at that level, right? You obviously have to have a level of skill and natural ability. But you mentioned there, like, always trying to strive and overachieve from a fitness standpoint. Was the questions and probing and trying to learn more about yourself for those reasons?
Yeah, definitely. So working on certain power aspects in my training, what rep ranges I need to be hitting or percentages and things like that, just really nerding out on that aspect, and then working on some, mass training on the field and all those broken broncos and things like that. And just the reason why we do those, and then working back on, okay, well, that's the reason why we do them. How can I be better at doing that? Or break a certain point down. So I used to break down a game of rugby and work out how long was the ball in play for. And, be 2-3 minutes max sometimes. You might get the odd time where it's in there for 6 to 8 minutes, but very rarely is the ball in play any longer than that. So I'd work so hard for 2 to 3 minutes, and then there'd be a scrum, a knock on, or a line out, and you get 30-40 seconds rest, and I'd just work off that. So break down the game like that.
What are those gold standard tests that you can remember from rugby? You mentioned kind of your fitness was your key point of difference. You mentioned the Bronco as well. What was those gold standard tests that you think back to rugby days?
Early days we did the beep test, I think, and then it sort of developed into the yo-yo test, which had a little bit of rest in there, but you still had to make the markers and things like that. So obviously that aspect on the field, and then there was a lot of stuff in the gym.
What is it about rugby as well? Because I think I draw upon a lot of lessons from rugby: the high performance, the team culture, the understanding of the preparation, be it from a nutrition standpoint, training standpoint, the on-off the field understanding of the game. What is it about rugby that maybe taught you a few things that serve you well now in your kind of ultra endurance career?
Yeah, I think being part of a team and like your decision on certain things that you might eat, drink, train, sleep, doesn't just affect you, but it affects your team. So for me, that was like a big driver, like not letting down the team, not only letting myself down, but if there was a decision that needed to be made, I would bank on myself. And if I couldn't bank on that, then I'd just bank on my teammates. And I think that aspect of being in a team environment, whether it's rugby or anything like that, is awesome. But it was also an awesome challenge to go out of that and be into a solo sport. So they say, ultra endurance and being out there on the field or in the course by myself, obviously there's a team aspect to getting there. But that kind of change in mindset.
When you finished up with rugby, mate, why did you not, obviously you finished playing, but why did you not kind of pursue coaching or staying in and around the game?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think I could see myself as being a coach, or a head coach at least. Fair bit of pressure there. Mate, to be honest, when I finished footy, it took me 2 or 3 years to even pick up a rugby ball again. And I didn't go play touch. I didn't just do anything, and it probably wasn't out of like spite or any kind of decision that I made. It's just my life just changed, and for the better. I think, and I truly believe that. But just never went back to it.
Because I think back to that time, and I think I shared that story with you. I was the same from 27 to 32. I don't think I picked up a rugby ball, even in a park or in a field in someone's house in the garden, where usually you just throw a ball around. Like that kind of just disappeared from my life. And this kind of the psychological kind of welfare of players post career and stuff. Was there anything that you anything manifested it towards the end of your career or in that transitional period that from a more like mental aspect that was going on?
I think it was always kind of drilled into us while we were playing that there was always, rugby ended, and we never thought it did, but we always had these people telling us that it did. It ends. You need to work on something else outside of footy and things like that. And I didn't really take that on board as much. I guess I learned a lot of skills that translate into business or, personal life and things like that from it that I drew from it. From a mental aspect, I think, the fitness and the sweating and things like that, just getting active and being active to this day, daily motivation or daily movement for me is key.
Yeah. So let's bring it into this kind of realm of functional fitness. What is it that inspired those workouts that you and I used to do for like back in the day? Because for most people that maybe followed me and were familiar with the way in which I trained, that was very similar to the way in which you trained. There was this, it was hybrid training back then, right?
Yeah.
Maybe wasn't as much running involved, but we were hitting ergs, there was D-balls, there was a mix of weights. It was very much like a hybrid style of training. We were trying to be as strong as we could. We always prioritized good movement. There was a certain of like aesthetic goal that we'd always try and achieve, but we wanted to stay super super fit. Whereas I know where I got influence from, but where were you getting influence from at that time?
Honestly, you cross the ditch there, and just going all in on a workout and just seeing what I was capable of. Sounds a bit weird, but I like going to that sort of dark place where everything's telling you to quit and it's up to you to keep going. I thrive in that situation. I take a lot of energy out of that into every other day life. But like that, 50 minutes into a 2-hour workout and you're sweating, you're ringing out, and you just everything's on the floor. I just love that. I just can't get enough of it.
Why?
I would hate to leave this earth knowing that I didn't give something my all, whether it was on the court, off the court, on the field, off the field. Yeah, I just love that aspect.
Is there a catalyst of something happen, an inflection point that's giving you that mentality?
I think my family, watching my mum and dad work for me and my brother and I, to give us everything that we ever needed. Like we didn't have we had a very normal upbringing, but my mum and dad would drive hours every weekend to go take us to rugby, and dad would be working endless hours and traveling for work and thing. I think that work ethic and determination to succeed in whatever you set your mind to is something that I really took from my parents. And now anything that I do, I take that in the back of my mind as a real why and a purpose to why I do things, and to make them proud and not let them down.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was just recording a podcast before this where I was on the other side of the mic, right, in the seat that you're sat in, and we were talking about upbringing and early influences, and I guess what this piece around kind of nature and nurture and how you end up thinking the way you think. And very similar for me, like the work ethic was kind of drilled in me from a young age from my dad. For people that are listening that maybe they've missed that opportunity, whether they've been parented a certain way or not, I think it's not necessarily the only way that you can get to a place where you want to strive and achieve later in life. Is there anything that you feel as though people can do to start to adopt that kind of mindset around fitness, around training, around challenge?
I think the biggest thing is like flipping the mindset of that there's failures. For me, there's no real failures. There's just learnings, and it's like cliche to say that, but like there was a DNF last weekend in a 100-mile race, and I was pretty flat about that. That really hurt. But there was so many learnings from that. I came into it, probably overdone from a few other runs that I've been doing this year. Didn't do the 1%ers at home, mobility and stretching and recovery and things like that. So I feel like going all in on something without the worry of external noise and just doing it for yourself. It might be getting up every morning and going for a walk. It doesn't have to be pushing yourself and redlining it, but doing something for yourself and setting those goals that are achievable and then working up from there and scaling that up. there's a lot of things on social media of everyone going out and going all out on something and doing 100 miles here and 1,000 miles here and, countries, across countries and swimming here and there. And man, I get caught up in looking at that stuff. I'm like, man, I need to do something like this. This is cool. But like, do I really want to do it? Is it going to benefit me in ways that I want it to benefit me? You don't need to do everything all at once, but getting yourself into that aspect of achieving certain things that you thought weren't possible and then just building on that.
Yeah, I think the thing I take from it is like just getting started, right? That the mindset piece and the ability to endure the 2-hour workout or to keep going when it's at 50 minutes and kick on comes from the exposure of being in those domains, being in those environments. And I think probably people are too long to get started for fear of judgment and the fear of failure. And people are then on the flip side of that, people maybe stretch themselves too far, whereby then they had no right to do that thing, and therefore they fail, and then they retract back to kind of a point of then not wanting to explore. Yeah,
and I think you've built like this awesome community of people that you've probably seen from people walking into your gym that have never gone to the gym before, and that's a win for them, And I think we in the fitness industry, especially in health and wellness industry, we need to take it back to that sometimes. It's like someone stepping into the gym or stepping into a recovery studio and doing an ice bath for the first time, like that's life-changing for them. For us, that's a daily habit. I get up at 4 a.m. and I'm in the ice bath straight away. But for someone else, that's a huge step for them. They were scared. They didn't know anyone. So we've created that community like you have at your gym or wherever it is, and being able to give someone the tools to do that, like that's life-changing for them. That's just a small step, but in 2, 3, 4, 5 years, who knows where they would be.
Yeah. So from that mixed modality training that we were fucking thrashing ourselves, whatever it was, 6 years ago, you were again one of these early adopters into this functional fitness movement and functional fitness competitions. The usual household names people will be familiar with turf games. I think the first time I actually saw you in person was turf games in 2014 or the one at Richmond. I think you were in the mixed team.
Yeah,
I was in the men's, and what that kind of functional fitness competitions, it was a rise of functional fitness competitions back then, and it suited our style of training so well. We come out of rugby, we had this mix of strength capability and also fitness that we accumulated from the Broncos and the yo-yo test and all those bits and pieces. Was competition then the thing that was missing from training for you? Like, why do you throw yourself into it? Why do you travel across the world to come and compete in a turf games?
Yeah, I think definitely teamwork and competition. So like we spoke about before, every week there was a game. It was a Saturday night, Friday night, whatever game it was. That was our sort of high for the week. Build all this training up and everything mentally to get to this game on the weekend, and then that got taken away. So it was a really awesome stepping stone, I guess, to get away from rugby and into something else that had the team environment, had the aspect of pushing yourself. You still had to think under pressure because it was a couple of people had to be on the air dying and someone had to be rope climbing and someone had to hold a dead ball or something like that. So there was the thinking and problem solving aspect to it as well. But being in that team environment, traveling the world, London summer, was pretty nice. It's pretty good.
So I think I know the answer to the question, but would you encourage people that are starting to explore, either they're moving out of sport or they're looking to explore what's next for their kind of fitness journey? They've maybe got in the gym 3-5 times a week. They're beginning to get stronger. Their confidence is being built. They're looking to maybe just put a couple of things in their diary that give them a North Star to shoot towards, and that maybe are a testing ground for, is what they're doing in the gym, the program that they're on, is it conducive with being able to perform under pressure and problem solve? Is that where you would encourage people to sort of take their journey of fitness, like to seek out those opportunities for competition?
Yeah, definitely. I think we can see that in the fitness industry on sort of, what's popping up with all the hybrid, high rock stuff. It's, turf games is there, Athex is there, all these other competitions that are doing that. I think it's taking what we're doing in the gym and putting it onto the floor, so people can perform and get that time with their teammates under pressure. Thinking on their feet and things like that. I think it's definitely where it's going, and there's plenty of levels to it as well, so you don't have to jump in at the top end. I think getting in there with a couple of mates and at the entry level or whatever it is, I think there's just like endless benefits to it.
Yeah. Going down this common theme of like the early adopter, right? And the GOAT tag. came out of rugby, early adopter into functional fitness. In functional fitness, early adopter into competing. Well known on the circuit of those of us that were in that kind of in that space. And then ultra endurance kind of comes into the mix. And you're again a bit of an early adopter. Like you've been doing this now, what, 4 or 5 years?
Yeah.
How did you move from functional fitness through to in ultra endurance? Like where was the inspiration? What was the catalyst of taking that path?
Man, my first experience of it was like unbelievable. I was actually in Greece at the time, and a friend of mine messaged me and said, "Mate, you got to jump into this race. It's 250 k's across the Atacama Desert, self-supported. It's this X, Y, Z." I didn't run a marathon before that, and I just thought, righto, I'm here in Greece. If I can run 100 k's over the next week, broken up obviously day by day, I'll sign up to this thing. And it was in like 4 weeks later, and I just jumped into it, started running, got my 100 k's, signed up to this race, booked my flights to Chile. I had absolutely no idea what I was in for, but I just went all in on it, backed myself. Bloody heaps of learnings there. Wrong size shoes, and mate, my pack was 16 kilos to start with, and my biggest stress of this whole thing was going hungry. So I packed so much food, and that was kind of my first experience in it. So it was a race the desert style race across the Atacama Desert, and that was my first experience in ultra endurance running.
So you're in Greece. Had you run prior? Like, what was this? How much did you run prior to this 100k week?
Like, I'd done a couple of half marathons and things like that, but nothing serious.
Were you interested? What was the buzz around running back then? Was there much?
Not really. I think it just like gave me that aspect of being free out there. You could push yourself, go and see new places, and it was sort of accessible for me.
What gives your mate the I guess the desire to message you to go, you should come and run 250k in a month's time? Like what had he seen from you?
It was a girl. Was it? Okay. Yeah. And I don't know. Like, we'd been chatting. She was doing a lot of these races. She's the youngest female to do all of them, I think. And it was just like, let's go. Yeah. It was, I don't know why me, why I said yes, but looking back, it was a good decision.
And how did you break up that? So you're in Greece, you're going to do this 100k. How did you break up that week? You've referenced you're quite into the data, like you try and do things a little bit more methodical and thought out. Like, how did you break up that 100k to give yourself the confidence that you were going to then go and sign up?
My plan was 5 days of 20k a day. There's a bit of drinking involved in there, so we missed a day. But yeah, backed up the day after and got those 5 20k blocks.
Was that just a number that you're giving yourself to say, like, if I can achieve that? Was there anything that was based off? Is there any reference point to 250 back to 100? Or?
No, nothing at all. I had absolutely no idea about anything about this race, nothing about altitude. We were super high up, no idea about elevation across the race, terrain, nothing.
How was that 250k broken up in Chile?
Six stages over 7 days, roughly a marathon a day with a double marathon on day 5.
And what was the elevation?
I couldn't tell you actually. 5,000 or 6,000. We're about 4,000 meters up, so quite high. Altitude sickness to start with in the lead up. Super hot during the day and pretty cold at night.
So you took a 16 kilo pack. I think that's probably the thing that I'll be most concerned about is like how much food do I need to take?
Yeah.
And actually, when we ran the Transalpine, like our packs were very heavy, and we were, I think we were like the guys like all the gear and no real idea on the start line.
Yeah, that was me.
What is it you learned during that process?
Huge amount. Day 2, I had to cut my shoes open because my shoes were too small. So obviously, your feet swell after a couple of days of running. Talking to Ned, they were like 4 sizes too big. His feet, grew 4 sizes over a couple of days. Mine had grown a couple. I cut the toe box off my shoes to have that open, which was ideal to run, but not ideal when you're running in sand. So that was a learning, mate. I'd wake up in the morning, have my breakfast, pack my bag, and there'd be a race brief, and it was like, oh, your first checkpoint's in 7 Ks. I'm like, okay. So I'd pack my 2-liter bladder, 2 soft flasks on the front. So that's an extra 3 kilos of water that I did not need for the first 7 Ks. Just like dumb stuff like that now I look back and I'm like, I'm not even going to carry anything. I'll just fill up there. So just, heaps of learnings about that. I wanted to quit. Everything I felt was against me and stuff like that. I'd raised some money for charity. So I had a internal and an external purpose that I felt like I couldn't let down. So every day it was, how am I going to get from here to the start line? No matter what it takes, I'll get there.
So I finished my race and I was like, I don't think I want to get back into this anytime soon. How did you feel post 250?
Yeah, post that was initially like I had to stay in Chile for a few days. I wasn't allowed to fly because of the size of my feet and legs. So that was pretty intense and had to have them up all day and things like that. But once I got back on my legs and worked it out, I think I just like found the new thing. Like I just loved being out there. And we were in spaces where you couldn't see or hear anyone. It was like being on the moon. And I just loved it. Like just the thought process of being there. There's something in your ear telling you to quit, but there's, the side of a challenge and a change and something that you can grow with. It just gave me all these elements of something that I just thoroughly enjoyed and now thrive off.
Now you're fully down the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
What was next? What was after Chile?
I think I came home and I think I got into sort of more functional fitness competing through that with a bit more turf games and those kind of aspects. Couple more ultra marathons, and then I actually had a discectomy in my back, so burst a disc in my back, which had to get operated on and pulled out of my spinal canal and things like that. So that was a bit of a setback.
Did that come from running, from fitness?
Yeah, trying to do a lot of strength training and be as strong as possible, and doing a lot of long distance running. I remember one day deadlifting 250 kilos and going and run a marathon, just to prove that it can be done. But then not doing the 1%ers around it to stretch, be mobile and look after myself.
How fast did you run that marathon after 250 deadlift?
That was about a 3:15.
When was that?
That was 4 or 5 years ago.
See, these are the untold stories that like hybrid athletes these days would be fucking quaking their boots over. So back then, obviously this hybrid training, like let's use that reference point of a 250 deadlift and a 315 marathon the same day. So this was back to back, right?
Yeah.
What gave you the impetus to go and do that? Like, because nowadays those sorts of challenges are the things that people are seeking, like, 500-pound back squat and a sub 20-minute 5K or whatever it may be. Were there people out there that were doing these challenges that you were like, I want to test myself against this guy or girl? Or was it just something that you'd started to your interest in training at both ends of the spectrum was evolving, and you wanted to see ways in which you could try and put these things together and test yourself?
I think obviously we were kind of early days, and I really wanted to push both those aspects there. But I feel not so much now, but back then there were a lot of haters on what we were kind of doing in the hybrid way, if we want to call it that. And there was people telling you couldn't do strength and you couldn't do endurance at the same time. And I feel like those kind of people have been drowned out now, and I don't see that or hear that anywhere near as much as what I did. But it was quite loud back in the day, and it was probably from older kind of people that had been around the system for a while and could see it kind of changing. But for me, I didn't want to be told what my limits were. I wanted to work out what my limits were myself. So for me, it was putting myself in the arena, and I didn't tell anyone I was doing it. I just went and did it. And so I didn't have anything to like fall back on. I mean, now a lot of people will announce something, they're going to do it, and then that's, they've put it out there. They need to live up to that. I feel like if you don't announce it, like, that's even harder. For me, it was anyway, just to have that. It's all on you. Like, what have you got? How much ticker have you got? And how much does it mean to you?
Let's look at the detail of some of that training then for a 250 deadlift. And how are you constructing your week?
So I'd do 3 days of strength and 3 days of conditioning. Squat day on a Monday, all the accessory work around that. Tuesday would be sort of an erg day, shorter EMOM, higher intensity efforts. Wednesday, deadlift day, little bit of upper body overhead push. Thursday, more engine work. I think we got that term from you back in the day. Longer style efforts, being in there for a while. Friday was upper body and gun day. And then Saturday was sort of more of a team-based workout or a run. And followed that sort of structured program, which was BFIT training back in the day for 4 or 5 years. And we had a great team environment around us, people pushing you in all those sessions, which really helped. But that was kind of the structure that I loved, I enjoyed. People would come in and train with us if they wanted to. Everyone was in our circles was kind of doing that kind of training. So it was easy to hang out.
Do you feel, because people kind of coming into this space now, or have been in for a short amount of time, this training 5-6 days a week, 3 strength, 3 kind of conditioning is like, it's a fairly, I guess, accepted now by you and I as like a good way to try and train both of those modalities or both those kind of like qualities. Do you feel someone coming in who's a bit more novice, like that's maybe where they should start? Or do you feel as though there's a need for people coming in to build a bigger strength base because they maybe haven't come from rugby or they haven't come from that GPP that we've done for years, maybe since our teenage years? Like how would you approach or advise someone coming into the space that's maybe doesn't have that history of training?
Yeah, I currently sort of coach 4 days of strength as a starting base. We'll have 2 conditioning sessions in there. One of them's a little bit more dialed back than the other, and then we've got on our recovery days, we have an option for a run. If it's something that you want to do, sort of real zone 2, 20 to 40 minutes of running. But those 4 days, strength days, are really structured. Upper body push overhead, horizontal push pull, then our lower body pull and lower body push. And I feel like that's the best way that I've found to build that real solid base. And I think it's like anything, if you don't have a good foundation, it's going to topple over at some point. So taking the time to build that, and it can be time consuming and it can be hard and annoying and you feel like you're not really going anywhere. But from an injury prevention point of view and things like that, I feel like it's like a non-negotiable.
That's you brought up injury prevention. You obviously got yourself injured. Was it just the running volume mixed with the training and just like too much too soon? Like how did the injury present itself, and what are ways in which people could maybe steer clear of blowing their back out and having surgery?
Yeah.
And also, how was dealing with injury? Because it is inevitable when you toe the line like you and I do, and many people do, pushing their bodies, finding where the limits are, like going to those places that's a little bit untrodden. You toe the line with injury, and it's part and parcel. I think there's a stigma around fitness people getting injured, and then people want to throw shade, like, oh shit, their stuff must not work because they're constantly getting injured. Like, it's actually part and parcel of the process. You have to put yourself in a position where it's like sometimes you're going to push too far to know, like, was my preparation sufficient or not? So what is it that was the catalyst, that injury? How can people maybe steer clear of that? But also, once you were there, what was that like in terms of coming back from injury, and what sort of lessons could you draw upon for people to, just keep in a positive frame of mind to know that they can come back from injury?
Yeah, back then I probably wasn't working in a sort of progressive overloading phase. It was kind of 100% every session, whether it was 8 reps on the squat, the next week was 10. It was just always, going the limit. And from a training perspective, a central nervous system perspective and things like that, that's a recipe for disaster. So dialing it back, percentages, rep ranges, deload weeks, just being a lot smarter with my training, because no one wants to get injured. And when I did get injured, it was pretty brutal. I had a bulging disc to start with, which I didn't do anything about. Had numbness down my leg, lost all feeling down my leg from my knee down, continued to run. That was my outlet. That was my space. So everything will be all right. I'll stretch, I'll ice bath and things like that. But like discs don't discriminate. And it sort of bulged, then protruded down my spine. So I went to a surgeon, I had an MRI. Doctor laughed at me and said, "Mate, you're straight into surgery." And I'm like, "I don't want to do this. I want a cortisone, or I want to get some steps before that." I looked at my MRI. This was during COVID, so we had masks on, and I couldn't even tell who the surgeon was. But he'd done 12,000 operations. He was the best of the best that I'd been told, and so I trusted him. But he was scanning this MRI for like 30 minutes, and we're just sitting there. And I was just sitting there with my mom, just looking at this thing, going, "What the hell's going to happen here?" And he's like, "Yeah, mate, protruding down your spine, surgery. I've got you in on Thursday." And I'm like, "What? Like, surely there's something we can do before this. Cortisone, nothing." He's like, "Yeah, you can have a cortisone, but they'll just book you in for the Thursday in 3 weeks' time because there's nothing going to happen. Nothing's going to get fixed." So we came to the decision of getting that operation. It was pretty big operation. I was in hospital for 4 days due to the pain and pain relief needed. I remember waking up out of that surgery and having full feeling down my leg. It's something I hadn't had for 6 weeks. Pins and needles and that's never fun. And that to this day, that lasted like 4 or 5 hours. The nurse came in, felt my toes. I'm like, "Yep, all good, all good." A couple of times later, all good. And then there was this one time she came in. I'm like, "No, it's not good." And she's like, "Unfortunately, that's just like kind of what it's going to be. Nerves take ages because it was nerve damage and things." So still now I don't have feeling down that right side of my leg from my knee, which is frustrating, but I'm kind of it just blocks out now. But 4 days in hospital, and then it was about 6 weeks of either laying down flat or standing up. Sitting to go to the toilet was the only time I was allowed to sit down. I wasn't allowed to lift a finger or anything, have a backpack on my back or nothing. So for my wife, it was pretty tough for her as well as it was for me. She obviously looked after me amazingly and got me back on my feet. But mentally, that was probably, some of the darkest times I've had, to have everything that I'd known, everything that was great in my life and that I was kind of good at was taken away from me. And it was the surgeon said, "You won't be back to doing what you were doing." Can tell you that now. So that kind of lit a fire in my head I was before surgery plotting about how I'm going to get back to what I was. But that was, certainly a tough time. I'm not back to deadlifting 250 and I will never do that again. But that's just the cards that I've been dealt, obviously, with my back and my discs, how they are. But again, learning experience, problem solving, challenges, growth, everything.
So just for athletes that are going back to this, I guess, this dose of strength versus running and obviously the lessons that you've learned and maybe doing too much, how would you advise them to view trying to get stronger and trying to get fitter at the same time? Is it a process of prioritizing one versus the other, so that one, you're not going to go down that road of maybe towards injury, frustration of like neither actually improving? Now you've kind of got that perspective. Would you prioritize one over the other during certain seasons or periods of training?
Yeah, I think so. I think I would prioritize my strength to start with, build the foundations. I personally believe in things that I've found in these ultra marathons and even at the back end of some of the faster marathons that I've done, it comes down to strength rather than conditioning for me. So building that strength foundation to start with, and then the old cliche, run slow to run fast and far. So implementing a lot more zone 2 training, similar to what I was doing with my weights. I was just going all out on everything, redlining it wherever I could. And it, as we said, it's a recipe for disaster. So bringing it back, building that solid foundation, a lot of posterior chain. We're always running forward, so building the back, strengthening that. Calves. I don't have any calves, but it's super important.
I can relate.
But it's super important to build the strength there as well. And then I have really worked with a coach, Matty, able to build out my running program. Most of it's in pulling me back, which is great. I need someone to do that. But yeah, a lot of zone 2, building that aerobic capacity to start with, and then going into some sort of speed blocks to build some pace.
We need people like you who have, like I say, the early adopters that can go out there and sort of teach us the lessons of this concurrent training and the fact that you maybe can deadlift 250 and run 350 marathons, but maybe it's maybe not the most sensible thing for people to do. And so thank you for that, like, being an early adopter and teaching us some of those lessons. What that recovery then post back surgery, you've been told you won't be able to get back to doing things again. How did you start to, and this, again, because I get people message me, particularly around the knee injury that I had. People, I've done my ACL. I came back to have a better career in rugby in particular post knee surgery, but also what I've been able to achieve now with the marathons and the ultra. That was never happening when I was younger. So how did you start to build yourself back from the back surgery, and what was the first time when you were like, okay, I'm going to put another race in the diary and I'm going to try and prove myself that the doctor was wrong?
Yeah, I think when something's taken away from you, that means so much. You value it so much more. So I was doing a lot of the smaller things that I needed to do that I'd neglected in the past. So much core work to build that strong core that helps protect my spine and things like that. So I think all the work around those things that I valued became imperative and things that I wanted to do. What I did next, I think it was sort of a marathon block. But I just worked really closely with the physio to build the base again, which was glutes. I had no glute strength at all. We've all got sore backs currently now, but those sort of things were super important to me. So I made sure that they were in my program and they were done daily.
Yeah, nice. When was the Bali marathon, ultra marathon that you ran?
I don't know what year that was, but one of the most rewarding things I've done. For sure.
Go on. Why?
Not anyone can. Well, anyone can sign up to this race, but you can't just come in the day before and do the race and then go home. It's a week-long event. You've got to raise money for Bali Children's Foundation, you get to raise money for Bali Children's Foundation, which is an incredible cause of putting kids through school over there, supporting their families to find jobs and housing and things like that. For me, Bali was an awesome place to go. It's close to Australia. Lots of Australians go there all the time, but we just go to sort of, the main areas in the party scene. But here we're sort of way up in the back country of Bali and in like actual Bali, like where these people, got 20 people under a house living on the floor and kids are going to school and they're completely sick. And I remember seeing kids with like conjunctivitis in their eyes. Like here, it's you're wrapped up in cotton wool, you're going home, don't come near anyone. But there, it's just that's what they have to do. They didn't have crayons to go and draw cool paintings or paint anything. The rooms were terrible. So for us, we raised over $250,000 US. We put 5 schools through the lifetime of their school life, which was super awesome. But we got to go up there and hang out with the kids, play soccer, play rugby, do spelling things, which I was never good at, but just awesome stuff that was super rewarding, all before the run. And then obviously the run, 84 Ks across Bali, fair bit of elevation to start with. I think it's 5K flat, and then the next 15 Ks is about 2,000 meters elevation. So you're hiking up a volcano. But again, just super rewarding to be able to go over there and experience that and give back. Makes the run seem like nothing.
So let's just talk through quickly the resume, because we've touched on the Chile Ultra 250. We've touched on Bali 84K. Just reel off what you've done in this space.
What else? I did the TDS race this year, which was 150 Ks around Mont Blanc, about 9,500 meters elevation. I then came back 2 weeks later and ran Sydney Marathon, which was cool. Hometown marathon last time before it's a major. And then 6 weeks. What time did you get? That was 2:48. That was a cool race. I don't know where I pulled that time from, but I was very surprised. I thought my plan was to go out with the 3-hour group and just hold on for dear life and see what happened. I thought the legs would completely fall off, but managed to pick the pace. I was actually sitting ahead of that and then held on. The last 2-3 Ks weren't pretty, but we got there. And then I just did a 6-week block into New York Marathon, which was awesome. Obviously, probably one of the pinnacle marathons around in terms of like the city just gets behind this thing. I've never seen anything like it. There's millions of people along the streets. We watched Tour de France and the cyclists, and the roads are completely covered with people. That was kind of like this when we were there. So That was awesome. Did that. And then I just attempted a 100-mile race in Mount Kosciuszko, which I got a DNF on.
We'll talk more about the DNF, but let's just go back to the marathon stuff, because I think this sub-3 thing is something that a lot of people, gun for. I think I don't know why that became the mark of a respectable marathon time now. I wish it was just 3:30, because I could be in the crew.
Yeah.
It's a very stark difference to be able to run 250k in Chile to be able to run a sub-3 marathon, and not many people have. I mean, I think people have the capability of doing both, but not many people actually end up doing it, because it's quite tough to train for both. Again, there's levels and there's different parts of the endurance space, right? Marathon versus a multi-stage trail runner through mountains. They're very different things. How did you end up running sub-3? Like, it sounds like it was just by chance, but there must have been some strategy behind it.
No, literally, by chance. I was talking to Matty Abel, who's my coach. He probably said, "Don't do this race. Your body's pretty cooked," which it was. But I just thought I've put all this time into doing a lot of hills for this race. I've got some strong legs here. Let's just make the most of it. Have a crack. I'm not going to go out, and if there's any niggles or anything, I'll pull up. I'm not here to do anything I don't need to do, but I felt in a good space, running with a few mates and things like that. And it just literally came off. I'm not sure. I enjoyed it. I redlined it. That's what I was kind of there to do. I looked down at my watch and we were holding 3:58s, which just, like, I don't know, it blows my mind to be able to think that I can do that at 93 kilos. But again, going all in on something or having a crack, if I didn't do that, would I be sitting here and just never try?
So 2:48 in Sydney, 2:44 in New York. How did you? We spoke a little bit about the kind of the strategy, just being go out and having a crack. Okay, fine. What about the nutrition standpoint? How do you view nutrition in the build up to that and in the race?
Yeah, nutrition's something that I train like a gym workout. I train my gut to withstand. I sit around the 90 grams of carbs an hour. I find works well for me. Depending on what race it is, will depend on my caffeine intake. But it's something that I've worked hard on for a couple of years to try and perfect. But being a bigger boy, you need a few more calories and things like that. And then obviously in a marathon, you got to carry it. So my strategy, New York is a tough one. We're up at 3:30 in the morning to get the bus over to Staten Island. So I woke up, I had a bagel, got over to Staten Island, had another bagel there, which was the American thing to do, I guess. Had a coffee. And then 20 minutes before the race, I had a gel, 30 grams of carbs in my gel. And then my strategy is about every 20 minutes from there, I wanted to have a gel. So I had about 8 or 9 gels throughout the race. 2 of them were caffeine, so 100 meg of caffeine. It was 20 minutes before the race, normal gel, 20 minutes after I've started, normal, 40 minutes into it, caffeine. 60 normal, 80 another caffeine, so 200 megs between the both of them. And then trying to stick to that 20 minute mark. I think towards the end it got a bit shorter, 15 minutes. I was definitely hurting. In terms of fluid, just trying to grab water and whatever else is on the course. And holding on for dear life.
How important do you think that nutrition piece is? Because I think it's often overlooked, right? And I know you're one for just like throwing yourself in the fire and seeing how you pull up, but it seems as though the nutrition thing you've worked on, you've got dialed, and you place a bit of importance on it. I think that's where, particularly because I think a lot of people, I think I'm fair in saying that a lot of people are using fitness still as a means to look better. Yeah. And they then underfuel and they get the whole performance side of it wrong. And the two can go hand in hand. But people, I think, are very underfueled when they take on running, particularly marathons. To hear you take a gel every 20 minutes would probably make a lot of people think, I'm taking one every hour, or I'm taking 3 or 4 throughout the whole duration, and they're probably running it in 4 hours, right?
Yeah.
How important is, particularly if you want to go fast? I mean, you're a big dude, a lot of muscle glycogen is going to get ripped through running at those kind of paces. How important is it to you?
It's to achieve that, it was what I needed to do. Saying of train fueled, not fasted. I used to get up in the morning and just go for a run and things like that. Now I'm having some crumpets and honey or a gel and things like that. I think you're like underselling yourself if you're not dialed in on that nutrition. Even a gym workout, like we know, like we go to do a gym workout and we've got workout fuel in the bottle, or some carbs in there and things like that. Like the difference in your workout is phenomenal, but your recovery starts directly from then. And if we want to be doing the sessions that we're doing daily, or a couple sessions a day, or whatever we're training for, it's imperative. If you're not doing it, you're only just doing yourself a disservice. On the
notion of training, then we spoke about this kind of like hybrid structure of a week. If someone wants to start to prioritize more like a faster marathon, what would their running look like? How many times a week are they running? What are the sessions kind of comprised of? I know it's very tough to give prescriptions when we don't know who we're necessarily talking about, what time they're looking to run and their previous kind of running history. But how many times a week would you say is like a sweet spot, irrespective of the gym training? And what do those sessions kind of look like typically in terms of a theme?
I think we could be sort of safe in saying 3 to 4 runs a week to start with. Things that I like to look into the client or who it is that I'm training is what their daily life looks like, where they've come from. Because if you're sitting at a desk all day and you've never run, both of them have never run. One's sitting at a desk all day, but one's a brickie and is laboring all day. So 8 hours on their feet, carrying things, hammering, jackhammering, all that kind of stuff. They've got a different base to someone who's sitting at a desk all day but still hasn't run. Even though they've never ran, they're different. So for someone who's been on their feet, you'll be able to give them a bit more. Their legs will be stronger. They've got a bit more of a base and foundation, whereas someone who is sitting at a desk obviously doesn't. So that's where I kind of work from to start with. But then we're looking at 2 to 3 sessions a week, probably for this person who sits down most of the day, and then 3 to 4 for someone who's worked on their legs. A lot of zone 2 stuff to start with, again, building that base out. We've got a long run on the weekends when it fits in with them. That's something that's done ideally either by themselves or if they're with mates at a talking pace. So their heart rate's low. We're practicing our nutrition on that from the get-go and building that base in our gut, which is ideal. And then once we've done 3 or 4 weeks of that, then we can start implementing some interval style sessions where we're increasing the pace and our heart rate across that. And then even if it is a flat marathon or a flat 10K or a 5K and things like that, I really enjoy and I see the benefits of running some hills. Just starting with a smaller incline to start with, but getting some hill training in there I feel is imperative, and something that I've learned from my coach doing these ultras and something that you might attest to. But when we're climbing and we're coming down's some of the hardest parts on our quads. And this race and the TDS race had 3 big climbs and 3 massive descents. And it was, the first climb we're working up. When we're coming down, we're just taking it easy. Get down there. Second climb will work. Second descent, we can push a little bit, but save the legs for that last descent. And for me, like I picked up 500 places on that from that sort of second climb to that last descent. I was running past people that were walking and limping and things like that. So training that downhill aspect and that impact through your quads, for me is like a bit of a secret sauce.
How many weeks out would you say? And again, I know it's we're just maybe picking arbitrary numbers, but how many weeks out for a marathon block would you prescribe to someone?
Someone who's never run before, 20 to 24 weeks. I think respecting the marathon, giving it the respect that it deserves is imperative. Someone who's done a fair bit of running but might not have trained that intensely, I think could get away with a 16-week block. I think is pretty good. But again, yeah, it depends on the person.
Yeah, I just think it's important for people to hear, because I think with all the kind of noise in the space now and people looking to challenge themselves, rightly so, they maybe don't probably give the things the respect they need, and that's where frustration, injury, things are going to creep in. And I think, the thought of training for something for 24 weeks to a lot of people that want the instant gratification to run a marathon or do a high rock or something next month is sometimes what they jump straight into, and maybe sure they might complete it, but at what cost? And also, like, is the goal to just to complete something, or is the goal to maybe give a good account of yourself? And
I don't reckon it was that long ago that if you said you were doing a marathon, people thought you were completely crazy. You're going to die. Like no one does that. That's like the top echelon. Now it's just like, how many marathons are you doing this year? Like it's the mindset of it is crazy. You finish a marathon and people are going, oh, what's the next one? What are you booked into? Like you can't even just sit and enjoy it. So it's definitely something that I feel like a lot of people can get caught up into, but like respecting it, I think it will benefit you in the long run.
You referenced earlier sort of being a bit of a bigger athlete at 93 kilos. A lot of people maybe put limitations on themselves for being a bigger athlete and maybe think they can't do it, or it's not for them, and they don't fit in. I'm sure when you rock up at the TDS, through Mont Blanc, you're one of the bigger dudes on the start line. Same with the marathons. Is there anything that, again, the bigger athletes need to maybe consider? Obviously the fueling thing, but has it been a limitation to you? Has there been any times where you feel as though like it's held you back?
Not really. I feel I did get that on the start line. Like, this bloke's too big. He's not going to make it. Things like that. Dial in your nutrition, I think, is super important. You're going to burn more calories than someone else who's a bit lighter than you, but you also have the ability to store a lot more glycogen and things like that. So the ability to have that and draw on that when needed, if it's topped up and fueled correctly. But I think I touched on it before, the strength aspect of these runs. New York Marathon, I was trying to tuck behind some people, but they were half my width, and I wasn't getting much draft behind them. But whatever. If you're gonna doubt it, or someone's gonna tell you how you're gonna be, or no, you're not good enough, you're too big. Like, I'm not going to give that the energy or the time it kind of deserves. I'd rather prove you wrong through that. So if anyone out there's feeling too big and things, I mean, look at Jens. Right? Yeah. Big boy. I remember watching that when you guys were training and doing Transalpine. And I knew it would obviously be harder for him, but the training was going to be great. But the strength he'd have up those mountains and things like that, I thought, he's good chance.
Yeah, I think with it, some people maybe because they start to compare themselves or their times or what they feel as though the expectation is on them, where again it just goes back to like running your own race. Like, me being able to run a sub 3 or whatever time I can run is like, the context of me running and you running is very different because of whatever, like our life constraints, kids, work, whatever we've got going on. So it doesn't, your time versus anyone else's time is largely irrelevant. Like, it's about finding what is challenging and what is going to make you slightly uncomfortable. What is enough within it. How many races a year is enough for you? I think people got too caught up in that comparison of other people, particularly now with the increase of social media and what's expected of certain people. Yeah,
and I think something that people probably don't think about is what's going on upstairs in their head and what's going on in their life outside of this event, because stresses of business, your relationships and things like that plays a huge factor in anything that we go into in terms of a mindset and things like that. So that's something that I've learned as well, juggling business and life, picking times when I can go all in on an event and when it's probably not the best time. To do myself a disservice going into it from a mindset point of view.
Yeah. So for my insight, you're someone who's done, like we say, fast marathons, 244, multi-stage endurance events, up in the mountains, on the trails, through deserts. 100-miler. Now, have you completed 100-miler or just the DNF from last week? What is the attractiveness, or what are those different endeavors like? What's the experiences of each one? What are the things that we should get excited for? What things should I get look out for? Because I don't think I'm probably going to go down this path of ultra endurance like you have. I'll be perfectly honest. I don't think I will. But at some stage, I will do a 100-miler. At some stage, I will get that fast marathon. I've done a multi-stage endurance. I'll try and do one now from being at altitude in the cold to in the desert. What is the attractiveness of each one, and what how are they different from each other?
Yeah, I think marathon block is a marathon block. You're not running too many Ks. You got some speed work in there. It's a bit more enjoyable. Training for a miler I was doing 25 hours a week, and it wasn't enough. Like, it's a full-time job, really.
So for the 100 miles, 25 hours a week, is that fairly standard?
Yeah, and that was just sort of what I could manage.
And
Ideally,
is that running hours of 25
yeah,
hours a week?
yeah,
So you're trying to fit strength work in on top of that?
yeah, yeah. And your strength would dial down as your Ks would go up. I was sort of peaking.
So we're talking an average of over 3 hours running a day.
Yeah, yeah. And like, weekends around here for me to get to the mountains, it's a 2-hour drive. So 4 hours of driving, and my long runs would be 6 to 8 hours out there on the mountains, hiking some trails and all that kind of stuff. Like, so that really took away from everything else that I have in my life and my relationship with my wife and my family and things like that. So that was a challenge in that long distance kind of aspect. Done a few adventure races where you run, cycle, whether it's on the road or mountain bike, and then kayak down a river across New Zealand. So that kind of aspect of the multidiscipline thing really excited me to be able to do lots of different things, and my training was broken up across that. But then again, the aspect of time that you need to put into each of those across the week becomes super hard. As I'm saying this, I feel like I just want to sit down and do a 10K and train for something like that, or just do some gym work. But I think the challenge, like just the challenge aspect of everything that I do, just brings it back for me to everyday life. Like, life's never easy. Juggling things at work, a lot of balls up in the air, but I really bank on the knowledge and the learnings that I've had from being out there on the trails or on the races or whatever it is to juggle problems that I'm facing day to day.
Which event or race or distance teaches you the most, or they all got their own merits?
I think they've definitely all got their own merits, and it depends on the person doing them. For me, the mile is a pinnacle of trail running. I haven't achieved it yet. And depending on what race it is, you might have 2 nights out there. So the second night gets pretty grim. You're out there by yourself. It could be raining, could be cold, could be hot, but you never know. And you never know how you're going to be once you get to that point. But that excites me, and something that I need to tick off.
Let's touch on the mile, because that's probably pretty recent, right? You came back last week. A DNF after 33K, which, for someone who's completed what you've completed in the space, things have maybe not gone to plan. I don't think you'd have made that decision lightly to pull out. Talk me through the experience of starting the race to eventually pulling out, and how things can change in an instance when you're doing those types of things. And then you mentioned you were pretty deflated at the start of the episode. How do you come back from that? You've obviously dealt with injuries and stuff in the past. How do you deal with the dent to the ego, the fact you've put it out there? Now you're a face of Lululemon and brands, and there's that added pressure on it because you're expected to finish, and there's content being made around it. Like, talk me through all of that.
Yeah, definitely. Coming off the back of New York, didn't give myself the best recovery and look after myself completely. A week out from this miler, I did a run around Centennial Park. 60-minute run, 20 minutes in the middle at tempo, could hold it for 10 minutes, and that was at like 4-minute Ks, 4:10s. Could hold it for 10 minutes, and then I was gone. And I was just like, I should have picked up on the signs then.
Gone being heart rate, just the pace.
Yeah, just couldn't hold it,
Got
just
off.
Exhausted. Legs had nothing. I was fueling for the workout too. So there were some signs there that I probably should have looked at. And so preparation wasn't great. Probably didn't respect it, or definitely didn't respect it for what it was. And then got into the race. We started at a 3:30 a.m. start. So obviously the night before was some broken sleep. Early morning, got to the race, kind of started running. Was trying to tell myself that I felt good, but I didn't. Legs were heavy from the outset. Left one of the first checkpoints, and we had about 10 Ks to climb up this mountain from Bullock's Flat up to sort of Perisher. And there was a lot of stairs and things like that. And my leg just started on my right side, which is my bad side from my back, just started really like seizing up. My big thing for that day was just to block out the noise. The noise is going to come. The noise is going to come. We know your body's sore. We know all this stuff. Just block it out. It's all good. We'll deal with it later on. And what kind of annoys me is that, it got to me. And it's something that probably hasn't got to me for a while, but it's something that did on this day. So I need to respect that. I need to learn from it. And it wasn't an easy decision to do that. As you said, there was, camera crews there, and a lot of time and money had gone into this race. So it wasn't an easy decision, but one that had to be made, and I need to learn from it. So I will, and I'll get that race done.
Do you think the learning would be when you can't hit that 20 minutes at maybe tempo in the middle of that hour run in Centennial Park you referenced, that you'd pull yourself out of the race? Are you someone that would pull yourself out of the race now, knowing that is the learning that you block out the noise and you just get it done anyway?
Yeah, tough one. The smart one would pull out from the race, and look, there's plenty of races on. There's always sort of next time and these sort of things. The smart one would be to do that, but I would struggle to do that, honestly. I would try and go in and block out the noise, but I would probably do a few things differently post New York, when you just redlined it for 2:44 and absolutely emptied the tank. I'd do a fair few things different.
Let's come on to you've got Recovery Lab on your t-shirt. Recovery's been a thing that we've referenced during this conversation as being the thing that you maybe didn't respect. You're obviously big on your recovery. I know that from all the years of following you. I know you're involved with the business Recovery Lab. That's what you do, right? Has it been surprising to you how long the body takes to bounce back post marathon or multi-stage? And because it certainly taught me a few lessons. I remember finishing the Transalpine, and I remember thinking, I've done 8 days without being inside a gym. I just wanted to hit some weights. And someone saying to me, "Oh, when are you going to be back in the gym?" And we'd finish on the Friday, and I think I said I'll be back in by Tuesday or Wednesday. And I was back in there, but like my mind, like I was there in body, but the spirit was there was nothing there for a number of weeks. And it was a real eye-opening moment for me, that the central nervous system, everything, just the motivation takes a long time to bounce back. Have you experienced the same thing?
Yeah. And I think I wear Whoop, so there's the measurements of resting heart rate and HRV and things like that. But I think for me, this one was just muscle fatigue. There was no real signs on the data that I look at or look for. It was more so, in that run, I just felt like my legs had nothing, but my resting heart rate was still within the range that it normally is, and my HRV was pretty good and things like that. So for me, it was, I didn't stretch, and I don't really stretch, which is a terrible thing to do, longevity wise and things like that. So it's something that I've implemented now daily, 10 minutes when I wake up. I ice bath every day, both from a recovery physiological thing, but also from a mental aspect. I thoroughly enjoy that.
First thing in the morning?
Yeah.
How long are you in there for?
First thing, 2 to 3 minutes.
About what sort of temperature? 8
or 9 degrees for me. Don't go too cold. It adds too much stress to your body. We want to benefit from it.
Because again, it's another thing that people are just like, I'm in for like 3 minutes at 1 degree.
You're adding more stress to your body than actually beneficial stress that you're adapting to and getting from. So we see that all the time in our studios, and we see it all the time on Instagram. But yeah, it's something that we kind of drill into our studios as much as we can.
So 2 to 3 minutes around 8 degrees, you think is a good place for people?
Yeah, definitely a start for sure. And then we build up to anywhere between 11 to 12 minutes a week is a great thing. And I think that's Huberman's sort of protocol that he works on, and you can accumulate those minutes over the week. And that's where we start. But yeah, for me, that's just a challenge that I've got to overcome straight from the get-go of getting out of bed. Like, it's not fun. You don't want to wake up, and I mean, Sydney summer's not too bad, but the winter gets cold, and it's on the balcony, and it's never pleasant. But once I get out of there, it's like, yep, tick, done. I'd make the bed, but my missus is still asleep.
And I think hindsight's a wonderful thing, right? But this year you've referenced like TDS, 100 miler, 2 marathons. Again, it's everyone's going to be different for what they can throw at their body throughout a year. But with now the perspective of this year, how many events do you think is like a good place for someone to try and hit within a calendar year of 12 months?
I think if you're starting out, I think like 2 to 3 events is enough. And I think it's a good start, and it might be the pinnacles of the marathon or the half marathon, and those 2 events prior are a 5 and a 10K. I think that's a great starting point for where you can get to, what you know that you can achieve from an injury prevention point of view, which is super important. But I think for you and I, we were just talking about this before. You asked me what I had booked in, and I went from saying nothing to Sydney, Gold Coast, 100-mile race, just like that. I think the aspect of throwing yourself in the deep end can be great, but there's also, some bad things can come from that. So trying to be smarter this year for myself is definitely up there.
Yeah, it goes back to what I said earlier about, the untrodden ground. Sometimes people like you who are, big face in the space, and, you've seen this year that what you've done is too much, being able to like pass that knowledge on to other people. Because I think it's very easy for people to get caught up in thinking they have to compete. Every month there's got to be something in there where they're competing, and the stress alone, the psychological and like stress, let alone the physiological, is enough for people to, or too much for people to accumulate if they've got multiple of those throughout a year. So I think that's quite an important message.
If you look at the top athletes of the game, like Kipchoge and those kind of guys, like they're taking months off after marathons. So for us juniors who are coming through and we're trying to back up 2 weeks later, like they're at the top of the game. So why are we trying to change certain things? So dropping the ego is a big thing, I think.
Yeah. When moving into sort of, I know you've got something coming up. Actually, we spoke about events. You've got something coming up in a week or 2 weeks' time, the Melbourne High Rocks.
Yeah.
Obviously, High Rocks is a massive thing now. It's going to be your first High Rocks, so something that you've not been an early adopter to, which is maybe against everything I said before about the ultra endurance space. Is it something you've kind of like looked upon and been like, this is, I want to stay, now there's so much hype, it's maybe not, something I want to just jump into. I remember when we went for dinner the other night, I think you made a joke of saying High Rocks is something we've been doing for 10 years, and it kind of is, right? Which is probably why, not to disrespect the people at the top of the sport, I'm nowhere near that. It's probably why I've had a bit of success in 2022 when I competed. So I'm sure that's why you'll have some success. What's your view on the rise of things like High Rocks and how that fits in with this kind of hybrid style of training, and how it stacks up against some of the other things that you're doing, and what's your motivation for doing it?
I think High Rocks is coming to the space, and I haven't looked or delved into it too much, but from what I can see is you've got all levels of fitness competing in the one thing, and they're bringing a whole lot of different functional gyms into the space. Everyone's been using a ski erg for a while now, and things like that, and developing that aspect. So I think from looking out from outside on the whole, I think it's great that people are moving more, getting into that competitive environment with themselves, or you've got the pairs and the relay team and things like that. So I think it's awesome. I haven't had a crack at it yet, so I want to get in there. I'm doing it with a mate of mine, Warren, who I've done a lot of adventure races with before, and he just completed the 100-mile race on the weekend. So that's going to be interesting. We're both highly competitive people. He's already in worlds for pro men's. So he's got a great time, and he's got a great skill set to it. So I'm letting him write the plan, and I'll just try and hold the pace, which would be cool. But I think as a whole, it's awesome. And I think they really hit the nail on the head there with where they're coming from. And it's going to be interesting to see where it goes, because my first thought was like, once you've done it once, does the workout change? How do they keep, scaling it and things like that? But then the response is, well, an Ironman's an Ironman, and triathlon's a triathlon. It's always the same kind of thing. Obviously, there's the different distances. So, like, is there going to be an ultra High Rocks where you're doing 3 rounds, or, something like that? So it'd be interesting to see where that kind of goes. But it's also interesting to see how many High Rocks coaches are popping up left, right, and center. So I want to get myself in the ring and have a crack.
Have you got a target time in mind?
I think we want to qualify, and I think it's around 56 minutes. There's a couple of bigger guys that have done it a fair bit that are all traveling down to Melbourne. So I think that's the time to hit, and I think that's what you were close to, or you hit around that. So I don't know what that looks like. It's going to be a red line event, which will be cool. So hopefully the body and the wheels stay on.
I think you're knowing your training history across all those kind of like 8 functional movements, and knowing your running capabilities, I think you can easily hit 56 minutes. I mean, a lot of it will come down to how busy the track is. Yeah. The rock zone, all these factors kind of come into it that can, you see some super, super fast times. And again, not taking anything away from anyone, depending on what track they've raced, but some tracks do run a little bit faster, some slightly slower. But I think using me as a reference point, 56 minutes in a men's doubles pro, I think that's comfortable for you boys. So
We'll see.
It's out there now. Is there, just to sort of round this up, like I said at the top, I think you're someone that is super inspirational in this space because you put yourself out there. It's not necessarily about, what the time is or win, lose or draw. It's about just, testing yourself. And I think that's the beauty of this space. And it's why I like it. I think it's probably something that I don't put myself in the arena enough. And I make excuses for that, but it's something that next year I'm looking to kind of correct some of those wrongs of previous years of not doing it, and people like you keep me accountable to doing it. So thank you for that. Is there something around that, the accountability and the draw of the competition that keeps you coming back for more, that you think as like a closing kind of statement for people that they should be, why is it so important to you, and why should people maybe look for that as well? Because I think a lot of people sit in the comfort of training and not put themselves in the arena. I know that I've done that too much over the years.
Yeah. I don't really enjoy sitting sort of in my comfort zone, both from a personal perspective, competing perspective, and business perspective. I'm always trying to learn. I'm always reading. I'm always just trying to find what's next in everything that I'm kind of doing. So for me, it's like trying to just keep ticking that brain over on what's next, and that kind of doesn't always work. Sometimes my wife likes me to slow down and be present in that moment. So it's a real juggling act there. But if you don't know, you don't know what you don't know. So get out there and have a crack. Drop the ego, drop the worry about what other people are going to do. Like that's old news. And I think the more that people go and do that and experience that, everyone's going to be better off. No matter whether it's from a fitness perspective, a business perspective, or personal perspective. Movement's medicine. We're lucky here that we've got the beach close by and things like that. So just getting up and going for a sunrise walk is something that I can do on a daily basis that helps me. But also getting into the gym and redlining it every now and then is something that I thoroughly enjoy too. But I think, just dialing it back to smaller goals, smaller steps. Don't be scared of hitting something that other people might think's nothing, but for you, it's super important, and it's all personal, really. So give it a crack. Why would you not?
Yeah, power. Like I said at the top, mate, I think it's someone that's super relatable. You've walked the walk in rugby. You've walked the walk in functional fitness. You're someone who, a bigger athlete. You put yourself in the arenas. And next year, I think it's going to be fun to watch what you take on. I know that myself and you have kind of verbally committed to running the Sydney Marathon together. You're going to pace me to a sub-3, which is going to be cool. But yeah, it's been amazing spending time out here in Australia. You've been a big part of how good the trip's been for myself and the team. So thank you very much. Those listeners that are going to take a lot from this episode, I hope they go and follow you off the back of it and watch what someone who's not a polished professional athlete looks like. Is someone that is a business owner. You're in a relationship. You're someone that's making the best of the circumstances you have when you've got to get 25 hours of training in a week. Like you make it happen. I think that they're the sort of relatable people that people need to take inspiration from. So Benny Seymour Benny, thank you very much, brother.
Thanks, bro.